One of the age-old opinions I see circulated around various websites, videos, and forums is about underwater levels in video games being universally terrible to the general consensus. These levels and mechanics will then apparently only serve as an annoyance to the player. One example would include fast-paced games like Sonic the Hedgehog, which encourages speed on land but sheer survival in the water, especially when you hear that heart-pounding countdown sound as you frantically try to find the next air pocket or bubble in plain sight.
Man!
With that being said, let's phrase this question in a different way as to how it pertains to me. Do I think that underwater levels always suck in video games? I could simply say yes, I could simply say no, or maybe, but that's not enticing enough for a full-blown discussion, right? Let's stick around and find out as I give my opinion and experience on the measure of quality given about underwater levels in gaming. We have to start at the crux of the issue and justify some possible reasons why people believe underwater levels are garbage. These are just some hypotheticals I'm throwing out there, but there could be a variety of different factors, just starting off with the simplest one, a fear of water. Yes, aquaphobia is an actual phobia out there, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there have a fear of water in this vast world. I'm sure a lot of people out there can't swim. So you must realize the nerve-wracking tension that someone probably feels if they have to swim around in a digital space, especially if they never played a video game before, but got curious to try it. I readily remember when my aunt was just scared of how Sonic jumped in the Sonic the Hedgehog series when she gave it a go for the first time. Call me crazy, but sometimes video games do have that effect on people, so there could always be some fear of how a character moves, there could always be some difficulties with grasping the mechanics alone. The next thing that comes into mind is how these levels are controlled. Out of personal experience, I do agree there are some moments in time where once you go underwater, the game either slows its pace or the controls do indeed change to accommodate swimming mechanics, which start to feel a little hectic if you have inverted controls within swimming levels and the rest of the game controlled differently. This is a fair and valid point because regardless of what activity you need to be doing, the controls should stay consistently good or easily accessible when a new mechanic or minigame comes into the spotlight. Resident Evil 6 is a perfect example of competent controls, but terrible underwater controls when you try to swim through a section of zombies with Leon and Helena during Chapter 3. There are games out there that supports the argument of avoiding the terrible trope of bad underwater controls entirely, and there are some games out there which even bring more frustration, more unbearable concepts like dying on contact as soon as you hit a piece of ocean. Vice City, anyone?
When your face is in the water, you will not be able to inhale any air. Therefore, you will need to be able to control when and how you take your breaths while swimming. It is important to remember that you should never inhale water while swimming.
Come to think of it, I would pretty much argue that Jag 2 has some pretty consistent and straightforward controls while you were underwater. And the same could be said also for Metal Gear Solid 1. There's nothing overcomplicated, there's nothing convoluted about being underwater in both of those games. Your goal is to basically get out before you drown with the same relative control schemes. Your character just might be slowed down or handled differently, which is understandable. Then we flip the coin to the other side that's all scarred up and burned, just like it came out of fucking Two-Face Harvey Dent's pocket, and then we see the underwater levels that are complete garbage. I mentioned Resident Evil 6, but there's Ratchet & Clank. Ratchet & Clank, the reboot that came out, I think, in 2016. There's an underwater segment where you have to get through the segment as fast as possible. Like, literally under 20 seconds or more, you have to go, like, just fast. And you could drown so easily in the last tunnel that it's pretty much unfair. It's like if Ratchet could only get a boost underwater, maybe that level would be a little bit more tolerable, but it's really not, and it's frustrating. And I'm like, it took me a couple of tries to really surpass that. That shouldn't be necessary in Ratchet and Clank. Like, you should be able to get through that no problem. Those games aren't really particularly too difficult, but I found that part really weird with how they programmed it, and I wish they would have gave the player some sort of assistance when it came to getting through that area pronto, you know, but that didn't happen. But we're going back to the flip side now. Another reason why people could write off underwater levels as being terrible, despite the always terrible controls issue being somewhat debunked, is that people probably do think that they're not designed well enough as the rest of the core package. I like to say this opinion is one I disagree with the most. Bad level designs can stem from anywhere, whether you're on land, sea, or air. I have went through some overly frustrating levels, like the Turbo Tunnel and Battletoads, to level designs that were so difficult I couldn't even continue my overall playthrough, like the second Blood Pipe, that tightrope walking section in Max Payne 1. That actually made me rage quit that game as a teenager, believe it or not. It all just depends on the level design of what makes an underwater level tolerable or not. I've played through Dino Crisis 2, and I would be pleased to tell people that's a really well-designed underwater segment. You don't believe me? Well, allow me to give you a little bit of an explanation. Cue the gameplay, of course, because it should be playing in the background. You have an end goal in this level to reach in a water suit. You have all these underwater dinosaurs that try to impede your progress that you have to kill along the way. You also have underwater weapons like the aqua grenade and the needle gun, and you can use this to attack the nearby enemies. It's something interesting, calm, and it gives you a chance to scope out the interesting details of the environment with these nifty little hops like your Michael Jordan. A little hop that could take you 10 feet in the air, you're better than Kobe. And then there's a boss fight that's done in this level. This boss can be somewhat annoying, he can be kind of a prick, but he does offer up some challenge, and just when you think this level overstays its welcome, it ends. In conclusion, that's not to say some bad underwater levels don't exist, or was even needed in the first place. I'm looking at you, RE6, and I'm definitely looking at you, Devil May Cry 1. The underwater segments in that game, inverted controls, the needle gun, ugh. But in the end, there are some underwater levels that complemented the rest of the game. Like Dino Crisis 2, like Crash Bandicoot Warped, those actually had some good underwater levels. So to say all underwater level games are terrible is generalizing. An underwater level is only as bad as the level design coupled in with the controls itself. Poor controls for any mechanic that is newly introduced will warrant negative reception. So mostly, an underwater level, for it to work, the rest of the gaming experience has to either control well or be a sequence that is minuscule to the grand scheme of things in the game design itself, or not be included at all. As for the future, would I personally like to see more underwater levels included? Well, yeah, I don't see why not. If they can continue to break this trope of all underwater levels being terrible with innovative gameplay that pushes the envelope, then I want to see what these levels could be. This is Renegade Operative signing off. I hope you enjoyed my opinion piece about do underwater levels suck, and I hope you really enjoyed it. You can find my social media links right here in the description below and on the video itself. I will see you guys next time. Later.